Professor Bodnar, are you there? I just made you a
Mm,
present.
yes, I am
Excellent.
here. I'm here, so everything should be fine. Thank you.
Perfect. There we go. Okay, well, right on time. So we're going to go ahead and get started um, as we wait for, I mean, some people will continue to file in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. My name is Nathan Silverstein. I'm the founder and president of the Polish Club at the University of Texas at Austin. Today's event is being hosted by the Polish Club at UT, a registered student organization. This is not an event sponsored by the University of Texas at Austin. The views expressed today are of the invited guest speaker and do not represent the views of the student organization, the university, or its officers. This event is being recorded and will be posted on the Polish Club's website, where we have a virtual library with recordings of all our past guest speakers. I would like to thank our co-sponsors, UT Center for Russian, East European, and Eurasian Studies, the Center for European Studies, the Liberal Arts Honors, Texas Global, the Department of Government, the Department of International Relations and Government, the Strauss Center for International Security and Law, and the Rappaport Center for Human Rights and Justice. I'm excited to introduce today's speaker, Poland's Ombudsman for Citizen Rights from 2015 to 2021, and professor at the University of Warsaw, Mr. Adam Bodnar. Professor Bodnar was born in Trzebiatów, Poland. He earned his bachelor's in law from the University of Warsaw, his master's in law from the Central European University in Budapest, and his PhD from the University of Warsaw. Professor Bodnar is currently running for a seat in the Polish Senate. At this event, Professor Bodnar will be delivering a speech entitled Rule of Law and Human Rights in Poland Today. He will then take moderated audience Q&A for the remaining time. It is my great honor to now welcome a leading Polish intellectual and statesman, Professor Adam Bodnar.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank really with great appreciation University of Texas in Austin, and especially I would like to thank Nathan Silverstein for inviting me here. I would like to express my gratitude for the whole organizational effort because it really took some time to organize this event, and I know that Mr. Silverstein devoted a lot of his personal energy and passion into making it happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to spend some time with you discussing challenges concerning rule of law in Poland. My feeling is that right now we are in a very special moment in the Republic of Poland because of upcoming elections. Elections are due to happen on 15th October, and those elections might be decisive for the Polish future for next years, maybe even for the next generation. Why is it so? Because Poland is not a typical country, typical democratic country any longer. As a follow-up to reforms that have started in 2015, we see that Poland is a completely different state than it was 8 years ago. Please note that Poland was one of the success stories after the transformation in '89, after roundtable talks, after the fall of the Iron Curtain, the fall of the Berlin Wall. We had a first fully democratic government, and Poland was transformed into becoming fully fledged modern democratic country. And this effort to transform Poland was appreciated by the international community. Poland soon became member state of the NATO, of the Council of Europe, and most importantly of the European Union in May 2004. And please note that this transformation has been achieved in both democratic life, but also in economy. So Poland became a market economy, and Polish citizens appreciated this, and they have used their spirit of entrepreneurship, their personal involvement into the Polish further development and enhancement of democratic values in a society. We could also see the growth of the civil society over all those years. But it appeared that maybe this economic growth and is not enough for the people. Moreover, it appeared that maybe people are not that much uh, acquainted and they are not so much ready to participate fully in the democratic process. Moreover, we had some segments of government where all those changes were not made sufficiently good, and especially one of those sectors of the state where was the judiciary. Please note that number of institutions that have been created in Poland, or at least that have been strengthened during 90s and later on, were to great extent transplants or were copied from other jurisdictions. And I think the most important example is the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court was, which is kind of a Polish Supreme Court, but only responsible for the judicial review, for the judicial review of the legislation adopted by the Parliament. This organ has been created in order to control the constitutionality of the legislation. Some people claim that over the years, the Constitutional Court became something like a third chamber of the Polish Parliament. But interestingly, the Constitutional Court did not have sufficient legitimacy in the people's understanding. So it had legitimacy among elites, among lawyers, among intellectuals, journalists, but not necessarily among people. So in 2015, when the Law and Justice Party, headed by Kaczynski, came to power, the slogan that that the Law and Justice Party should take over the Constitutional Court, that the Constitutional Court is lacking legitimacy, was not basically met with the resistance by the Polish people. There were, of course, demonstrations, but not by the general public, rather those people that were remembering communist past, people that were highly devoted to the democratic values. And for the Law and Justice Party, the destruction of the independence of the Constitutional Court was just the first step to create a number of other reforms affecting prosecution service, affecting secret services, affecting civil service. So I would say that people that are serving at highest positions in the whole state administration, as well as control over public media that is playing much more important role in Poland than in such countries like the United States. You have your national public radio, but my feeling is that it does not have that impact on the public discourse as the Polish public radio or the Polish public television. And later on, in 2017, Law and Justice Party started to attack judiciary, and there were a number of different steps of this attack. This attack on the independence of judiciary consisted of different legislative packages, but it also consisted of the general narrative saying that judiciary is illegitimate, that it should be closer to citizens, it should be more efficient, and it should be subject of some kind of a control. But in the mouth of those expressing those words, putting judiciary under the more control and bringing more legitimacy, in fact, meant that judiciary requires significant political control. And basically, this attack on the judiciary happened with the use of different specific instruments, by disciplinary proceedings against judges, by lifting judicial immunity to some of them, by suspending them in their positions, by moving them from one court division to the other. Let's imagine that you have a criminal court judge serving there for 25 years, and suddenly such a person is moved from criminal division to the labor or family division. You may imagine how those people could feel being removed from their judicial bench to the other judicial bench. Or let's imagine, judges that were totally loyal to the state, that were totally loyal to the constitution, that were forcibly removed from the position and were suspended because of some fake disciplinary case. So basically, in 2017, 2018, a number of that kind of instruments have been used with respect to judiciary, including, as I said, this narrative of presenting judges that are protesting against those changes as so-called elite judges, as some extraordinary group of people that should be subject of political limitation. Fortunately, Polish society and Polish actors were strong enough to resist that kind of changes. So they started to use different techniques in order to protest against those illegitimate changes, such as protests on streets that were quite massive, such as using the litigation of cases before the Court of Justice of the European Union, which is kind of a Supreme Court for the European Union, and by litigating cases before the European Court of Human Rights, which is a premier supranational court dealing with human rights. And I would say this mixture of protesting, also putting pressure on the European Commission, and also litigation of cases before the Court of Justice of the European Union resulted in a series of judgments and other political pronouncements saying, dear Poland, being a member state of the European Union, you should not do such things. You should stop it. You should stop violating basic principles of the rule of law, basic principles of the European Union legal order. I would say that Poland did not stop that much, but at least some of the judges have been reinstated. And moreover, this process of destroying judiciary has been stopped. But it has been stopped not forever, but just because of elections and just because of the fact that European Union has threatened that in case Poland is not changing the course of changes in the judiciary, then the money coming from so-called European Recovery Fund, which is like a really massive EU fund created to help the economy after pandemic, that this money would be suspended to Poland. So to great extent, European Union, in order to stop the process of destroying Polish judicial independence, used kind of a conditionality mechanism by threatening that basically money would not go to Poland unless Poland stops reforms of the judiciary. So that is the reason why some of the judges have been reinstated, not just some deeper understanding that those changes are wrong for the society and that they are wrong from the point of view of Polish constitution, but simply because of the pressure coming from the European Union, financial pressure. But I would like to say that it was possible only because Polish civil society showed a great level of resilience by not only participating in protests, by not only litigating cases, but also by providing different educational activities for Polish citizens. But I would like to say that this whole problem with the rule of law condition in Poland is not only about judiciary. Please note that one of the organs that is important for the rule of law structure is the prosecution office. These days, prosecution office is totally politically subordinated to the political needs of the government. Under the Polish law, the Minister of Justice, who is the part of the government, is at the same time Prosecutor General, which means that Minister of Justice has direct influence over any investigation that is happening in Poland. And, like a Caesar, the Prosecutor General may either say, okay, this investigation may go forward, or like a Caesar, it may say, sorry, it has to wait, it has to be stopped. And because the structure of the prosecution service is heavily hierarchical, it is extremely easy for the Prosecutor General to achieve that effect. So it creates a sense of lack of accountability for any abuses of power on the part of Polish politicians or on the part of the politicians of the ruling coalition. So sometimes when we see like very clear, very obvious abuse of power, there is no mere chance that that kind of a case could be evaluated and could be subject of some bill of charges or a bill of indictment submitted by the prosecution service. We have also a problem with the secret services. Poland is one of those countries in which the Pegasus spyware has been used, and it has been used against members of the opposition, against prominent lawyers, prominent, let's say, I would name it, dissident prosecutors, also against some of the civil society leaders. So the use of the Pegasus, especially against politicians of the opposition party, is a symbol of changes. And you may guess that nobody until today was held responsible for the abuse of the Pegasus spyware in Poland, although facts are pretty clear what happened in Poland and how the spyware has been used to target opposition. There are also, I would like to say that those institutional changes, they are not just implemented by virtue of the legislation. They could be implemented because of the support that is given quite frequently by the president of Poland, who is coming more or less from the same political circle. But interestingly, those changes are usually accompanied by the orchestra of hatred, of public pressure coming from public television. So there is a concept created by Professor Andras Shajo, who is a retired professor of the Central European University in Budapest, but he was also frequently visiting professor in NYU Law School. Professor Andras Shajo created a theory of so-called ruling by cheating. So we see that ruling Poland these days is not just about using the power of different institutions that are controlled. It is very much about limiting the level of the quality level of parliamentarism in Poland, especially in the lower chamber of the parliament. It also requires different manipulation and propaganda techniques to address different points and different concerns. So sometimes we have this feeling that the governance of Poland is based on the constant manipulation or on constant pressure on political opponents, civil society movements, or human rights defenders, as well as journalists. So this concept ruling by cheating and using disinformation and manipulation propaganda is something that is quite frequent. And one of the most important roles in this regard is played by the public television, which has a extremely significant access, especially in rural areas in smaller cities. I would like to say that this rule of law crisis has a very specific impact on protection of rights. First of all, citizens cannot be sure regarding whether the cases before courts are reviewed by the independent court. Second, whether their cases are final, because there are different mechanisms in the system installed that may undermine any final judgment in any case. Second, investors are not sure whether Poland is a safe place to invest their money. Just to give you an example, which is very US relevant, 2 years ago, we had a situation when the parliament tried to pass a law that was named Lex TVN. This Lex TVN was the law that was going to deprive of the broadcasting license for the major television station TVN24, which is owned by the Discovery Networks, so Warner Bros. Discovery Networks. Fortunately, because of the huge international pressure, the president vetoed the law. But can you imagine that this law required intervention of Antony Blinken, who spoke directly against this law, just in order to stop Polish authorities to not to go forward with this law. And finally, this situation creates a danger for individual rights and freedoms. We see a number of situations concerning police detention, abuse of the pretrial detention by courts, limitations on the freedom of assembly, but also heavy restrictions on right to abortion, especially limitation of this right to abortion by virtue of one of the judgments of the Polish Constitutional Court, as well as restriction on LGBT plus rights. I should also add practice of so-called pushbacks, which violates rights of migrants and refugees crossing the Polish-Belarusian border. So simply, when you see all those abuses, one of the major concerns is that you do not have a remedy, because the whole system is constructed in such a way as not to allow people to have remedies. So this whole crisis situation has a very significant impact on the protection of rights and freedoms in Poland. And these days we are facing it not only from the point of view of like the general rule of law structure, but also from the point of view of elections. So elections that are due to happen on 15th October are subject of discussion whether they could be at all fair. Why is it so? First, we see that public television is playing an important role in in, in promoting views and objectives of the ruling party. So public television should, in theory, serve all the political actors, should be reliable source of information, but in fact, it is serving the needs of the ruling party. Second, we see a number of examples when Polish government is using different public funds in order to promote candidates affiliated with the ruling party. Third, we see that uh, that together with elections, so-called referendum, which is like a direct voting of citizens, is organized. And this referendum is basically regarded as a source of gathering some additional money for elections. So please imagine that Polish state-owned companies have created special foundations that are going to provide significant money for the purposes of the referendum campaign. And basically, if you look into how those big foundations work and how much money they accumulated, they look a little bit like, American style PACs. So they are not referring to some specific candidate or some specific party, but basically they refer to questions that are posed by the referendum. Basically, you may see that as a result of this, there is an unbalance. There is lack of balance of powers between those that are fighting in elections and those that are incumbent, and that would like to stay in power. And finally, we see a number of measures that are used by the ruling party in order to attack political opponents. I've mentioned already those different mechanisms of propaganda in public media, but we can hear different statements that could be regarded as incitement to hatred or incitement even to violence. Even during last couple of days, two members of the parliament have been beaten up in streets just because of their political views. And recently, one of the members of parliament, just exactly 1 week ago, has been arrested during one of the demonstrations. Police did not want to look into her ID, showing that she is a member of the parliament. So openly, the parliamentary immunity has been violated. So it is the climate of elections in Poland. So I do believe that irrespectively of this, elections would happen, and that we will be able to elect the government that is basically leading Poland into the democratic way. And one final statement why those elections are significant to the Polish future. Because if if the ruling party wins elections, it means window of opportunity to adopt number of legislative changes that are kind of expected by this political camp, and there was no sufficient, let's say, political power to do it. I mean, such laws like, once again, law on media and restriction on the operation of media, law that may restrict the judicial independence, law that may centralize the money for the research, which means that universities would be much more obedient to needs of the public power, or the laws that may control the operation of local self-government. So to put it in general way, if elections are won by the Law and Justice Party, it means that the whole legal system and institutional system would be cemented, that we would not have another chance for next 10, 20 years of ruining of winning elections, and that this party would move Poland further in accordance with the Hungarian pattern into some kind of a authoritarian system. And that's why this situation with the rule of law is so emblematic and so important for the Polish future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Bodnar, for those comprehensive and enlightening remarks and a really solid overview of the political history, recent political history and happenings in Poland. Thank you very much. You answered quite a few of the questions that I had on the list that I compiled from the audience, but luckily you mentioned a lot of other things, so I think we'll be able to have a very fruitful discussion on this matter. So to start out, I want to ask you a question about your specific time as a statesman, specifically when you were ombudsman for citizen rights from 2015 to 2021. And I would and I know it's difficult for you to objectively assess this, but how would you, to the best of your ability, assess the success of your time in that position?
You're right that it is difficult to assess it objectively, especially if you are using that kind of a word like success, because you are being the ombudsman, you are doing a lot of different things in order to protect rights you believe, rights that are provided in the constitution and values that you are believing in, that are basically constitutional values. The problem is that even if you do it, you see a further destruction of values. You see how those values are undermined and how the state transforms itself into some kind of a non-democratic state. So you cannot say that it is your successful role because you may do different things, you may encourage citizens, you may empower them, but you see at the same time erosion of the rule of law. So I would say to be honest, I would love to say that it was a success story if elections in October 15th are won by the opposition. Then I may say, yes, my work mattered. My work was important to citizens. They understood that protection of those values was important. But it is like a general picture, because on the one there is one point. But second, and maybe I would like to look at this from more colorful perspective. Please look that kind of institution like ombudsman is operating with the staff of 300. With a lot of significant public, with a lot of significant constitutional powers. And that kind of institution may inspire others to work. It may use different legal means to be active in protecting different rights or to protect the principle of the rule of law. And my feeling is that quite often, by my intervention, I inspired others to act, others to be engaged, others to be courageous to protest. And maybe I think that the success was that we have managed to delay some of the changes that were inevitable. And maybe some of those changes that could happen did not happen thanks to our interventions, thanks to the involvement of international actors, thanks to getting into radar the Venice Commission, OSCE, or just by encouraging individuals to do their to be citizens protecting against a violation of their rights. So I think that my major success was that I was this kind of a institution that was encouraging others, that was empowering others to act and to fight for values they believe in. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bodnar. Now that we have discussed a bit of your personal history, why don't we transition to the upcoming elections? How can voting be made easier and more accessible for Poles both in Poland and the US?
It is a general question, but let me start with maybe voters that are residing abroad, okay? Because we have more or less, Polish population abroad is really massive, okay? But not everybody is exercising their right to vote. In previous 2019 elections, there were 314,000 participants of elections that registered and then later on voted on the electoral date. And I think one of the, but please note that under the Polish law, in order to in order to vote, you must go to the election station. Okay, so to the electoral commission. You cannot just, I don't know, click on a certain link in internet, or you cannot send an envelope with your vote. So in my opinion, like the most important, the, the, the most achievable and doable work of increasing voting of Polish citizens residing abroad would be just to provide for correspondence postal voting. Because my feeling is that it would increase the participation by 20-30%. And, just look at the United States. It's a huge country, and you have electoral commissions just in a few cities. So sometimes, if somebody is living, I don't know, somewhere in the middle of Midwest, it might be quite difficult for such a person to travel, all day long to the electoral station to vote in person. With correspondence voting, it could be easier. Second point is that maybe I had this story when I was in the United States. I was just a couple of days ago in New York, New Jersey, and in Chicago, and people told me that we don't feel that much connection with Poland because we are not paying taxes in Poland. So why should we participate in elections when our residence is in the United States, when we do not have any fiscal connection with Poland? So I said to them that, listen, as long as Polish state provides you with right to vote, it is not a question of your morality. It is not a question of your obligation, but rather simply of your right. So you should just simply exercise it and don't think, too much about it, that whether it is proper or not. And why is it proper? In my opinion, because first, you have usually families in Poland. Mm, somebody is always, living in Poland who has connection with you. Second, sometimes you have your interests, financial interests, investments in Poland. Third, you might be interested that Poland is developing in a certain way because maybe sometime in future you would like to go for retirement to Poland. So it is already enough. And finally, you are kind of a mini ambassador of Poland and Polish culture, identity, language. And just because of this, this participation in voting is something symbolic. So I encourage basically Polish people to participate in elections. And please note that I'm trying to be quite objective here because, in fact, in the United States, most of the voters vote for other candidates than candidates of the Democratic opposition. So I try to be objective here as much as possible. But I think what is needed also is one step more by the Polish state, and I think that for me it is interesting, but it is maybe not typical that all the votes that are casted abroad are counted to the electoral district from that I would represent. Okay, so district number 44, because this district includes 4/4 of Warsaw plus all the votes abroad. Moreover, all the votes casted abroad are counted to the list number 19 in elections to the lower chamber of parliament, to the Sejm, which includes basically all the inhabitants of Warsaw. So the question is, maybe we should create an alternative district for only external foreign voters. So such a district in which external voters would elect 5 members of parliament, 5 members of the Sejm, of the lower chamber, and 1 senator. And then, such persons would serve throughout, the whole term. Maybe, some of them would change their residence for the time of being elected, or maybe, they would commute. If you live, let's say, in Norway, it's not a big deal to commute between Poland and Norway to participate in sessions of the parliament. Or if you live, I don't know, in Germany, or if you live in France. With the United States, it might be a little bit more difficult. If it would happen, please note that it would require from political parties to be much more active in promoting candidates, in selecting those candidates, in checking who is active among the Polish people living abroad in terms of representing Polish interests, of being involved in promotion of Polish culture, Polish heritage, and in fighting for rights of Polish citizens living abroad. So my feeling is that that kind of a change may lead towards increasing the general turnout of Polish voters residing abroad.
Thank you very much. On the, you mentioned the Polish diaspora, and that segues nicely into the next question, which you actually just touched upon. But it's recently been reported that you have been one of the people supporting the establishment of a new commissioner position that would be responsible for representing the Polish diaspora. And so is that the same as what you were just talking about having like a senator represent the Polish diaspora, or is that something different? And how would that work?
It is different because, if you are senator, then basically you are the member of the parliament, and then you have all your responsibilities that are connected with being in this position. My feeling is that Polish people, Polish Polonia, Polish Polonia, oxymoron. Polish people residing abroad require some additional attention and representation in resolving different problems that appear in the context of their life and their connection with Poland. And of course, in Poland, we have the Ombudsman for civic rights. So that was my position. I held between 2015 and 2021. We have the Ombudsman for children. We have two parliamentary committees dealing with with issues concerning migration and rights of Polish people residing abroad. We have also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But I have a feeling that there is a need for kind of like a one person, one major address for anybody from the Polish community that could be spotted and that could be referred to when there is some kind of a problem affecting Polonia. So I think that this person should be a little bit like a spider in the web of connecting different other institutions. So not somebody that is kind of, imposing a role, I will resolve all the problems, but rather somebody who would try to connect interventions by different institutions that would push different institutions to be active in resolution of problems and cases of Polonia. And I think that in the beginning, we should establish this office as a high-level official of the Polish Senate, being elected on the basis of open competition, open and transparent competition based on qualifications of potential candidates. Certainly such person should have, some staff, a few persons of staff. And later on, if this institution would prove to be relevant, maybe we should go into establishing like the fully fledged, proper Polonia Ombudsman institution. But I would be in favor of kind of testing whether there is really need and whether a person who would be elected to this role is able to play a significant role in connecting those different worlds and different experiences. And naturally, such a person should be somebody coming from abroad, so somebody who had this experience of being experience of a Pole living abroad for a certain period of time, in order to understand the reality and different circumstances of how is it to be Polish citizen living abroad, having still some connections with the motherland.
Thank you. You mentioned the referenda that are going to be accompanying the parliamentary votes and elections this just in a few weeks from now. And you mentioned why some are criticizing the referenda, because some are saying that having the referenda at the same time as the parliamentary elections will allow the current Polish government to skirt campaign finance regulations. You touched on that a little bit, but I wanted to get a bit of a more in-depth answer from you as to, will the referenda allow the current Polish government to get around some campaign finance restrictions? Why or why not?
Correct. That is, in my opinion, the major reason for organization of referenda. There are like four topics in this referenda. They refer to great extent to the retirement age, to the status and sale of the Polish state-owned companies, and to the situation at the border and the Polish-Belarusian border, and finally to the policies of the European Union concerning relocation of migrants. So basically, we have a couple of topics that are kind of pushed by the government as being like the most important ones, allegedly, in the Polish public discourse. And suddenly, by virtue of law, if you organize the referendum, then you are using money from a completely different purse than the money that is used for the electoral campaign. The electoral campaign is extremely transparent and is subject of very strict regulations how you may collect money and how you may spend this money. Like, for example, just to give you one example, you cannot get money from corporations for elections. You cannot get money from residents abroad. So if I would ask anybody to give money for my campaign and this person is living in the United States, I could not accept, or my electoral committee would not be able to accept this money. So it must be a individual living in Poland, paying taxes in Poland, in order to provide a personal donation to the electoral campaign. And moreover, if you use money, then basically you have to be very much clear and specific regarding how you use this money. In the context of referendum, you do not have all those restrictions. So you might have number of actors, including private bodies, private foundations that are also involved in this referendum. So it creates a risk that some of the topics of referendum are used in order to polarize the political scene, and some of those topics are used in order to shape the public discourse around some issues, and this pressure towards proper recognition of those values is not properly and there is no remedy to stop this promotion of those certain values. And especially, please note that Poland has a number of powerful state-owned companies like the oil, gas, insurance, banking companies that are that may use like enormous amounts of money to do it. So just imagine that, for example, there is some campaign organized on Facebook, on YouTube, with the use of this money. That suddenly, every citizen in Poland is watching all the time some commercials that are relevant to, let's say, retirement age, and surprise, surprise, the same topic is raised by members of the political party, of the ruling party, as one of the key electoral topics. So this is a kind of a way of circumventing traditional limitation on party and electoral financing. And second point connected to referendum is that the referendum is not very much secret, because by virtue of the Polish law, in order for the referendum to be valid, at least 50% of citizens have to participate in it. So right now there are a number of people, mostly affiliated with the opposition, that say, but we don't want to participate in this show, because for us it is just the instrumentalization of the referendum for political purposes, and that the whole point about it is just to use this improper financing. So they say, we don't want to participate in referendum. So they have such a right, but they have to give a note to electoral commission that you do not want to pick up the electoral the referendum card. But if you ask for this, then there is a note written, the note which is annotated in the register of voters, that you had to that you refused to pick up the referendum card. So the question is about the secrecy of voting, because probably those who are not picking up the referendum card are those who are rather voting for the opposition than for the ruling party. So we are a little bit in a constitutional trap there. Basically, we have this referendum. We don't. Quite many people do not want to participate in it, but there is no like a clear solution how to get away with it.
Thank you. So do you believe that the referenda kind of sort of allowing these the ability for the incumbent power to get around some kind of campaign finance regulations, do you think that that's a loophole that warrants campaign finance reform?
For sure, but I think we need a number of other reforms of the party financing. Okay, so there is no doubt about it. But in my opinion, it is once more a repetition of Hungarian scenario. It was Viktor Orban that basically started to use that kind of a technique of referendum in order to increase polarization of voters, in order to increase their mobilization. So surely, if there is a change in the government, we would, based on all those experiences we had during last years, we would have to reform the legal system also in the regarding the elections.
Do you believe that the referenda, because you mentioned that both the referenda is sort of serving two purposes. One, which is helping the current government get around some kind of campaign finance restrictions, and then the other is to potentially gain a mandate from voters if they vote in a way that's favorable for the current government in the referenda. Which do you believe it is more? Do you think that the referenda are more an attempt to get around campaign finance restrictions, or do you think it's more to get a mandate from voters?
In my opinion, just the first thing, just to get more money. But at the same time, please look that those issues, those topics of referenda that are chosen are kind of quite uncomfortable topics for the democratic opposition, because please look that the democratic opposition would like to concentrate mostly on the condition of the Polish economy, on the inflation, on different other economic constraints, while the referendum pushes the opposition into that discussion on migration, and moreover, or into the topic of the retirement age. Sometimes opposition says that we are not going to do anything with retirement age, but the question is, are you against reintroducing the higher retirement age for Polish workers? Okay, so basically it is kind of coming back to some topics that have been subject of discussion, 9-10 years ago, and that were part of the program of the civic platform. So those referendum questions are to great extent manipulative, and they are kind of suggesting the answer in order, and they are very much beneficial to the interest of the ruling party. So these are not like those typical questions that you have, let's say, open answers, but rather those answers are very much suggesting some kind of a political motivation behind creation, or behind mere questions that are asked.
One final question, at least for now, regarding voting, which is, why is it that voters outside of Poland, or at least in the US, that votes must be counted within, I believe it's 24 hours? Why is there kind of such a rush, and that's therefore causing people to worry that not all the votes will be able to be counted in time?
To be honest, I don't know what is the rationale behind this. So that kind of a proposal has been made. Probably, there is a risk that maybe there was some kind of a political motivation, because in previous elections, Land Justice Party was not very much successful. abroad, especially when with respect to voters residing in such countries like UK, Germany, or France, or Ireland. So maybe this time it is about so this restriction maybe was supposed to limit ability or of those external voters to participate, or maybe it was aimed to deter foreign voters from participation in elections. Fortunately, as a result of the pressure from civil society, from the ombudsman Marcin Wiącek, from myself also and other politicians, uh, the number of electoral commissions has been changed, and right now we have altogether 402 commissions throughout the world, all over the world, and hopefully, in some of those commissions, uh, by creation some of those new commissions, especially in such cities like London, we limit the risk that those votes would not be counted. Because then the certain amount of votes that would potentially go into one commission would be divided into two or three separate commissions.
To transition into a few slightly broader questions. First, you mentioned multiple threats to the rule of law in your introductory remarks. However, I want to ask, do you see any one threat to the rule of law that you believe is greater than any of the rest? And if yes, what is that and why?
All of this is quite complex and interconnected. Okay, so so there is no like one single. I believe that two most important ones are limitation of the ability of the Constitutional Court to review legislation, because without the Constitutional Court, we are as citizens very much vulnerable to what the parliamentary majority may do with us. So we do not have this, like a typical safety net that would protect us against the abuse of by the parliamentary majority. And the second is prosecution service. Okay, so prosecutions should be a guarantor of justice, should be a guarantor of the rule of law, should be a guarantor that in case we are victims of crime, we are protected. And it does not happen like this. Okay, so quite often prosecutors' cases are heavily politically motivated. So these are like two concerns that I would like to list here.
And would you say that those two concerns are also what you see as the two main threats to human rights in Poland today? Or would you say that there's a difference, that you see other factors more threatening human rights as opposed to those that you just mentioned that are threatening the rule of law?
Of course, it is the institutional dimension, okay? But human rights are not violated just by negligence of the prosecution office, or they are not violated just by virtue of the improper legislation. They are simply violated by specific actions by the state officials, by police officers, by secret services, by a number of other people acting on behalf of the state. And when I see, let's say, police brutality, when I see position towards LGBT plus rights, LGBT plus community, when I see position towards women, it is not only about wrongful legislation, it is also about daily behavior of state officials. I will just give you one example. Access to legal abortion is heavily restricted in Poland due to the judgment of the Polish Constitutional Court of 22nd October 2020. So by virtue of this law, when fetus is having a genetic disease, women cannot make a termination of pregnancy. So that is basically the end result of the judgment. So what happens these days is that women either try to arrange for so-called abortion pills, so they try to make so-called pharmacological abortion, or they try to go for to Germany, to Czech Republic, to Netherlands in order to perform the abortion, in order to perform the termination of pregnancy. So Look, if the prosecutor office starts to be interested, what is the reason of one or the other woman traveling abroad, it becomes quite scary. Okay. If the prosecutor is interested heavily into the work of NGOs and individual persons that are providing access to pharmacological abortion pills, then it is also becoming scary. So it is not a question of law. It is just a question how state officials, how the police, how the prosecutor's office is reacting to that kind of a wrongful legal environment. And such approach creates a danger from the point of view of daily human rights.
Thank you. In your introductory remarks, you mentioned minorities in Poland in passing, and I just would like to ask a more in-depth question as to what is the state of minority rights in Poland today?
It depends which minority you are thinking about. Okay, but let's start, let's say, with national minorities. So we have like traditional notion of national minorities, which are people that were living in a certain territory for ages, for centuries, and they have a right to special protection because of the residence in a given territory. So one of those minorities is a German minority, which is living in Western Poland, mostly near Opole. Um, and what is the problem with German minority is that the Minister of National Education has restricted access to teaching of the German language as a minority language in Polish schools. So interestingly, all the national minorities in Poland have access to 3 lessons per week of their respective language, and the German minority is the only one which has just 1 hour per week. So it is, like a pure abuse of rights. And in addition, we can observe a lot of anti-German rhetoric in the Polish, expressed by Polish politicians. Second minority, which is very vulnerable, is LGBT plus minority, because first, Poland is Polish officials, including Mr. President, use from time to time a very homophobic and transphobic rhetoric towards LGBT plus community. Second, we do not have a legislation that would protect properly rights. We neither have the law on the gender recognition, nor we have the registered partnership law. Uh, so, um, so and that kind of laws on registered partnership on gender recognition are kind of civilizational basics, but we don't have them because there is no chance for having like a proper discussion on those issues in the Polish parliament because of the pressure coming from the government. And finally, I would like to mention like 2 groups: persons with disabilities. Poland has ratified a very decent document, which is the UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities, but still this convention is far from being fully implemented. So there are a number of social situations where rights of persons with disabilities are violated. And finally, I've mentioned this already, rights of migrants and refugees. Please note that at the Polish-Belarusian border, this practice of making pushbacks, of expelling people from Poland, of not taking documents or testimonies from them is a grave violation of human rights obligations. So it is also one of the most vulnerable groups.
Thank you for that very, once again, comprehensive overview. You mentioned migrants, which segues nicely into my next question. This question is a bit overbroad, then I can tailor it a little bit. But what do you think is the solution to Europe's migrant crisis, or maybe solutions? And if that's you think is too broad, then I can tailor it a little bit to how do you think Poland should respond to Europe's migrant crisis?
You are right that it is a broad topic, and I think there's almost nobody in Europe that would have a good answer to this question. But my feeling is that, but I would put it like more generally. Please note that Poland, because of this rule of law crisis and because of some other tensions with the European Union, Poland is not regarded as a, let's say, serious member state of the EU. Okay, so we are regarded as this problematic country that is posing all different tensions, that is encouraging some uh, sometimes quite irrational debate. And we need to have a new government because Poland should be a strong actor in the EU, and it should be a strong, rational actor that is expressing its views on the basis of review of existing data, scholarship, with the participation of experts. And simply by being this like problematic country, we are moving Poland. Poland is a little bit moved outside of the like a spectrum of the traditional debate regarding the future of the European integration. And in this respect, the migration crisis is one of those important elements of this discussion. So it is Poland should be simply one of those countries that is shaping this debate. And also, Poland has a quite important thing to say. You know, Poland is the country that has accepted as refugees more than 1 million Ukrainians. And it gives us a little bit more to say regarding how the migration policy should be shaped and what should be the role of Poland in providing for this policy, in making it comprehensive, but also well thought and well designed.
Thank you. You've also repeatedly mentioned the Kremlin's manufactured migrant crisis on the Polish-Belarusian border, as well as the issue of pushbacks. Some Poles have commended the Polish government for defending the country's border. Others have criticized the government, claiming that the government has instructed Polish border guards to quite literally push these migrants back into Belarus after they've already crossed into Polish territory. That's the meaning behind the phrase pushback. What do you think about the Polish government's response to this situation?
Mm. You know, for sure, it was a hybrid war, a hybrid situation that Lukashenko tried to use Polish border as this weak point, Um and he tried to import kind of import number of migrants in order to cross this border. But still, even if such situation has arisen, Polish authorities should not basically go into using that kind of a scheme like pushback, because these pushbacks are just a grave violation of rights. Poland should simply try to stop those people and simply review their papers and then send them back if they are not fulfilling criteria of being migrants. Poland should send them back to their country of origin. And Poland basically did not try to do it, So our obligations were not our international commitments were not met, and that's why we are subject of heavy criticism from the European Court of Human Rights.
Right. So to summarize, essentially, you agree that the Polish government should be able to defend its borders and that this was a hybrid war, but you don't agree with the way that Poland went about doing that necessarily.
Correct. I think, I would say that the question of style is important here, because this style is not just about how it looks like, but whether you are dealing with, individual human beings and how they are treated. And right now, we have the movie in cinemas, which is quite loud, the movie entitled The Green Border by Agnieszka Holland, Oscar-winning movie director. And we have a huge debate around this movie. And it shows, the level of emotions. And also, for many people, it is one of those first moments when people started to really understand what happened with those pushbacks, that those pushbacks started to have like a proper face of some, people that were subject of that kind of a treatment at the border.
Right. So to clarify, because the issue is so highly politicized and divisive that there are a decent amount of people in Poland who disagree with the claim that the Polish government has committed any pushbacks. To the best of your knowledge, has the Polish government instructed border guards to commit these pushbacks, and has that actually taken place?
Yeah, of course, such things do not happen without order of the government. Moreover, over the time, those pushbacks have been legalized by the law. So right now, by virtue of the law on foreigners, it is even, possible to make those pushbacks and having the legal authorization for doing this. So for sure, it is the orchestration by the Polish state, by the Polish government, and I'm happy that still there are so many, civil society actors, medical doctors, local human rights defenders that are saving people in forests. And I'm really happy. I really claim that Agnieszka Holland has decided to make a movie on this because this movie is really eye-opening to many of us.
Thank you. Moving on to some civil liberties questions. Early in your introductory remarks, once again, as I said, you really hit on many of the topics, and so I'm grateful that I can ask you more in depth about these specific issues. A commission in the Polish Senate was investigating the Polish government's alleged use of the Pegasus spyware. Recently, the commission found the Polish government's purchase of the spyware to be illegal and to have actually happened, of course, in order for them to have found it illegal, in its official report on the matter. What measures can Poles and their elected representatives take to ensure that the Pegasus spyware is never again used on them by the government?
The most important aspect of it is that there should be some reflection on the part of the government regarding the use of the Pegasus. And right now, there is no reflection. So the Polish authorities, Polish government, state officials did not participate at all in any proceedings of the Senate committee on investigating the Pegasus affair. Moreover, they did not participate in any proceedings concerning the European Parliament committee on the same issue. So, it is a shame that, we have serious committees and members and people affiliated with the government basically ignore those committees. It shows something about the quality of the public life and about the perception of things. So that is the first thing. Second thing is that we know now, thanks to those reports, how intrusive Pegasus spyware was. And third, we know that we should repair the situation after elections. By repairing, I mean creating a comprehensive public oversight regarding secret services, because right now secret services are without this oversight. Second, we should obviously put into the services people that are obedient to the law, to the constitution. And third, we should increase the power, of course, to verify the work of secret services. So secret services, of course, they should perform their work, but simply they should not behave politically. And second, they should perform their tasks in accordance with human rights principles. And the Senate committee has prepared something like general objectives, general assumptions, how this law should be shaped. And I hope that this law would be adopted by the future parliament.
Thank you. The next question is a bit historical, has a bit of a historical component to it, but also touches on civil liberties. Poland's Institute of National Remembrance, a state historical body, has prosecutorial powers. Do you think state historical bodies should have prosecutorial power? Why or why not?
It's a good question, but even today we have a situation which is quite interesting. It seems I know I didn't check it specifically, but I think yesterday there was this situation in Canada that one of the persons who was allegedly affiliated with SS Galician has been kind of celebrated in the Canadian Parliament, and there was like a huge outreach concerning this person. This person is 98 years old. And I know cases that Polish Institute for National Remembrance was requesting for the extradition of some, war criminals to come back, to bring them back to Poland in order to prosecute them. So such things happened, even today. They are not that often, but still they happen. As long as those people live, they could be subject of criminal responsibility. I don't claim, please note that I'm just, I just seen the news from Polish media that allegedly there is thinking about maybe making this extradition request towards this person. But I remember some cases from the fresh past that some old Nazi era criminals or Stalinist era criminals were subject of that kind of proceedings. Second, this prosecution service is playing important role in evaluating so-called lustration affidavits. So lustration vetting affidavits are that kind of statements made by some public people that are elected to some public offices that they were not collaborating with any secret service before 1989. So somebody has to check it, and then somebody has to accuse the person if the person has lied, and when the person has made a wrongful illustration affidavit. So maybe it is not such a bad idea. Of course, such function could be played by prosecution office simply, but somehow in the Polish, tradition, it is this way that those prosecutors who are dealing with those issues are based in the Institute for National Remembrance.
Thank you. Speaking of pursuing alleged war criminals and then criminals during the communist period in Poland, recently a landmark Polish Supreme Court ruling came down allowing for communist era judges to be prosecuted for judicial crimes against anti-communist dissidents. Do you think it is better for Poland to seek justice in this way by revisiting the past, or do you think it's better for Poland to move on from the past, with that latter option having been the country's policy since the fall of communism until now under Mazowiecki's Gruba Kreska or thick line policy?
I think Gruba Kreska was understood not only as moving forward, but it did not mean that that if somebody has committed criminal cases, that this person should not be subject of some indictments. And there were a number of such cases. The problem is that Polish state was not effective enough in indicting such cases. I'm in favor that in case there is a violation of law, you should try to use the law in order to prosecute people. So, and right now, this issue is so much heavy because maybe after 2023, after elections, we would face such a situation that some of the people affiliated with the Law and Justice Party would face criminal responsibility for crimes that they have committed during this time. So we'll see how it may go and in what direction, how people and those measures of transitional justice could be important. So even if those measures last for a long time, I wouldn't be the one that would say that no, you should forget about things and you should move things forward.
To transition back to contemporary political discourse in Poland right now, as we're leading up to the elections, former Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, current leader of the Polish opposition, has criticized the current Polish government for using anti-immigrant rhetoric. But in doing so, Tusk himself was criticized for using anti-immigrant rhetoric. Among other things, Tusk called the large number of immigrants that the current Polish government has allowed into Poland a, quote, danger, end quote, and said, quote, Poles must regain control of their country and its borders, end quote. Why did Tusk make such statements when he criticizes the current Polish government for making similar statements?
I'm not the perfect person to be asked about those issues because, I'm the part of the Civic Platforma, Civic Coalition team, and I have a rule that I'm not commenting on the general policies and general motivations of the Civic Coalition. I'm the one who is going to present basically the program, and I will always repeat that my role in the Senate would be to guarantee that any migration policies in Poland are done in accordance with human rights guarantees.
Okay, thank you. The next question has to do with the Polish government's COVID policies. Recently, Poland's state auditor found that the current Polish government had severely mismanaged COVID response funds. How can the Polish people ensure such mismanagement never occurs again?
I think that first of all, we should have independent prosecutor's office. That's for sure. Second, we should guarantee the independence of that kind of audit committees. But I think that with COVID, we should do something more. In my opinion, we should create something like a special institute that is dealing with different abuses committed during the COVID era. Uh, and so this report by the Supreme Audit Chamber is kind of like a opening chapter, in my opinion, for the operation of that kind of an institute. So I do believe that that kind of institute would appear on the Polish scene, and moreover that it would have some, let's say, compensation function, because quite often my feeling is that people lost the lives of their relatives because of the negligence of the Polish state, and until today, some of those cases were not properly resolved or examined.
Thank you. To transition back to another question about contemporary Polish political decisions, and we understand if you're not able to comment on this, but if you could provide or shed any light, it would be greatly appreciated. But just for the record, I think it's important that this question is read to make sure that we're representing a diversity of political views. One of the Polish opposition's election candidates for the upcoming election is Michał Kołodziejczak, a man who has criticized Donald Tusk and has made numerous anti-American statements and pro-Russian statements. Why would the Polish opposition support such a candidate?
I think that the major reason is his engagement into the protection of rights of farmers. And sometimes my feeling is that it works this way in politics, that you are kind of a little bit closing eyes to some of the difficult statements, believing that in future such person may perform a proper role. And for sure, Mr. Kołodziejczak is a person who is really devoted to fight for voters, devoted to fight for farmers' rights.
All right, thank you. So despite protests from the US and the EU, the current Polish government has gone ahead with forming a commission to investigate Russian influence in the Polish government. However, supporters of the current Polish government point to the fact that in response to the protests, President Duda significantly reduced the commission's authority. Does the Russian Influence Commission in its current state threaten the rule of law and human rights in Poland? Why or why not?
No, I'm happy that, of course, this commission has been established, but please note that its role is very much limited after amendments. So fortunately, the protest that was organized on the 4th of July has been really successful and has resulted in limitation of the operation of this commission. Certainly that kind of organ should not be used in a typical discourse. We had a feeling that the mere creation of this commission was kind of a creating of a witch hunt for Donald Tusk, or maybe some other, mostly him, but maybe also some other politicians. Right now, it seems we have just 3 weeks to elections, and almost 2.5 weeks into elections, and so I hope that nothing more happens with this commission. And if we have a necessity to investigate any case, then simply we would use like a typical format of the investigative committee that might be created by virtue of the Act of Parliament.
Thank you. Another civil liberties issue is the issue of deep fakes, which have been used in Polish political squabbles, such as in videos where artificial intelligence or AI was used to generate the voices of certain Polish political figures. What can be done to prevent deepfakes from being used in Polish politics?
I know this case, obviously. My feeling is that it was these are like kind of, like early childhood attempts of using artificial intelligence, and as long as we would not regulate it, then that kind of attempts would appear. Please note that when the Civic platform was using those videos for the second time, already there was this, message that it is the voice that has been created as a result of the use of the artificial intelligence technique. So there is this kind of a step forward, but still, in my opinion, it is not just a question of Poland, but it is a question of for international community how we are going to regulate the use of AI, and what could be the impact of the AI Act that is going to be adopted at the EU level. And in this case, my feeling is that uh, such institutions like Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe or the Venice Commission may provide like a good venue for establishing some standards. What and how could be which AI techniques could be used in the context of the electoral campaign. Of course, personally, I would be in favor of limiting the use of it because it is quite a dangerous weapon that may have a strong influence on electoral preferences.
Right. So you mentioned that the Polish sorry, not the Polish government, but you mentioned that when after the initial time that the AI was used, the parties that used it put a disclaimer saying that it was AI, that the voice was generated by artificial intelligence. However, do you think that that is the appropriate way to address the issue, or do you believe that any use of AI to artificially generate someone else's voice should not be allowed at all?
It should be subject of discussion, basically. It should be subject of, let's say, some kind of a regulation. Always, like a, personal dignity should be here at stake. So, I don't have a clear view right now that this specific technique should not be used. Because maybe in some other situations, it is not that improper to use this technique. But basically, it should be subject of proper reflection and regulation that takes into account the potential abuse and potential detrimental effect to the people's dignity.
Thank you. The coming up this weekend is the march for or protest of a million hearts and or miliona serc
Yeah.
in Poland. And I would like to ask, what role does Platforma Obywatelska, PO, the main leading opposition party, believe that or hope that protest will serve as far as galvanizing its movement?
No, I do believe that it is like the last accord before elections, that this tradition of big political demonstrations is important for the purpose of showing to the people that the victory is going to be close. Last time when we had this march on 4th of June, it was extremely effective in terms of showing that opposition is strong. It is always a venue for providing like big political speeches. And for me personally, the most important thing was meeting people, simply meeting people that think alike, that are determined to, sometimes to cross sometimes to go for, hundreds of miles in order to participate in this march. And can you believe that, I know two gentlemen from Chicago that are going to fly over the Atlantic to participate in this march because it is so relevant, so important for them to be on this 1st of October. So I do believe, I hope that this march is going to become an important important political event, and just like a last step before winning elections by the opposition.
Thank you. In your introductory remarks, you mentioned TVP, which is the main nationally government-controlled broadcasting service in Poland. And as you said, you believe that it's either mostly government propaganda or verging on that. I don't want to mischaracterize you, but regardless, the question is, what can be done to help transform the National Broadcasting Service into a more either bipartisan or nonpartisan institution with bipartisan or nonpartisan broadcasting?
We had this situation. So, in my opinion, the public television before 2015 was meeting those criteria. So, basically, we should come back to the old times. But it may require some time. It is not that easy to make it like in one day. Uh, because the huge impact on the operation of the TVP is played by the National Broadcasting Council. And it is not that easy to, let's say, put members of the National Broadcasting Council that would be fully independent in their role. But I do believe that we'll be able to do it. My think is also that we should invest some time into decentralization of the public television, into being more present locally and not so omnipotent nationally. So decentralization plus coming back to the roots and also by creating different kinds of supervisory bodies with the participation of citizens could be a way forward with changing public television.
Thank you. You also mentioned the Minister of Justice, who has, under the Polish constitution, the power also as the prosecutor general.
Yeah.
Would you be able to share a little bit of history as to how those kind of connections of powers and having both embodied in a single individual, how did that ever go about in the first place? How was that established?
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that?
With pleasure, but it would require really like a longer lecture, and it seems to me that we have just 3 minutes to go. So maybe if you could kind of shape your question in a more like specific and concrete format.
Right. I guess my question then would be, is the fact that the Minister of Justice is also the Prosecutor General, and the fact that is that a relic of communist/Stalinist practices and ways of governance?
Uh, it is a little bit, but for years it worked pretty nicely. So we didn't have that much problem because the Minister of Justice, Prosecutor General, was not exercising individual powers over the prosecution service. And basically, when Minister Ziobro in 2005, 2007 started to use his powers very individually, then we have realized, how dangerous that kind of a system might be. And that's why in 2009, 2010, we have separated the Prosecutor General from the Ministry of Justice. So for 5 years, 2010, 2015, we had independent Prosecutor General. Right now, we are having not only coming back to the old system, but also Prosecutor General has much more powers than ever powers to individually influence any course of investigation in Poland.
All right, thank you. So you had expressed a desire in our previous meeting to go to speak for 2 hours. At this point,
No.
No?
I expressed my desire to speak for 1 hour and a half. So we
Okay.
have kind of changed it from 1 hour to 1 hour and a half. And, I just
Okay.
scheduled some meetings with my
Okay,
family
perfect.
just in a couple of minutes.
Case,
Yeah.
excellent. Well, in that case, I think, would you be okay with bringing the meeting to a conclusion?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Professor Bodnar.
Thank you, sir.
Every time we have a guest speaker speak, we'll either learn a lot of new things. I'm going to speak for myself. I either learn a lot of new things or new records are set. Today, I'm happy to say that both happened because I learned a tremendous amount from you, and you're really just an absolute authority on these issues. But on top of that, you were the most generous with your time of any speaker we've ever had. And
Okay, thank you.
I'm about 20 speakers. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It is
Pleasure is mine.
incredibly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.